Hello. So we are going to be doing the diamond. Oh, I didn't turn on my light. Did not turn it on yet. There we go. We are going to be doing the diamond earring. This one is diamond flower, and it's basically brick stitch, increasing method, and my decreasing method. Pretty straightforward, and how to get it nice and stiff like that. Because that is important, is your tension. So I always thread my needle by pulling the thread down between my fingers and pushing my needle down on top of it. When you're using wildfire, which is what I prefer for woven portions like this, when I want that extra stiffness, pulling this thread kind of through your nail against your finger gives it a little bit flatter edge, which is super helpful when doing this. So you will have instructions in your kit or pattern, and you will have the color map. I usually turn my color map upside down in front of me, which you can't really see. It's just out of view here, but it's sitting upside down right here, and then that way I can kind of follow along in the same direction as how I'm making them. You're going to start with your 4 beads. So this is the same way I start my woven like fringe earrings. Start with my 4 beads, get them down to the end. I'm going to do a little knot with just like an inch tail. You don't really want a ton of tail there. Okay, and now I'm gonna go up through one side. So your beads will be sitting in like a little set, 2 sets like that. Go up through one side. I'm gonna grab my wire protector. So wire protectors have a tube on one side, and then it's like a ditch around the top and a tube on the other side. So you're gonna pull your thread through there, and then you're gonna have it fall into that ditch across the top, and then you go down through the other side. I pinch this all between my fingers so that I'm kind of controlling the thread as it goes and drops in there, okay? And now we're going to loop again one more time. Make sure our piece is nice and secure. Doopy-doopy-doo. Now, sometimes I tie a knot here. There's a lot of knot there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to loop around down through my thread bridge once and go through that little loop I've created. Pull off to the side just to kind of secure my tension. And that's how we're starting. So that's how I start my woven pieces. That's how I start the triangular tops. I always do my triangular tops top down. So I'm increasing because I find that I can create the most stable piece that way. Everybody's a little different. Some people quite like the ladder stitch method where you're decreasing from the widest part and you start with a ladder stitch, but that's not me. So I do suggest learning from multiple people and find a way that works for you. This is what works for me. So I'm going to show you what we're doing. Each time you start a row, you are starting with 4 beads. It doesn't matter if you're increasing or decreasing. This is a 2-drop brick stitch. I do find it's easiest to learn brick stitch using a 2-drop because you do have more control over the shape of your piece. And then you can go to a single drop after that if you like. So this is the thread bridge. You'll hear me refer to this bit, the thread that goes across the top of the 2 beads there. I'll refer to that as the thread bridge all the time when I'm doing these. I don't know its name. That's what I called it. So that's what you're learning it as. So we have 4 beads. They now will fall together like that. I'm going to feed my tail up through the 2 that are in the middle. So like the second set of beads. I feed my tail up through them so it's kind of hidden in there. And now I'm going to chase it with my needle up through there as well. So this thread is under the thread bridge and going back up through my beads. So it's anchored, my beads, on that thread bridge. Okay. Now I only have one thread bridge So all beads are getting anchored in that same spot. 2 beads under the thread bridge and back up through those beads. Okay. So the whole idea of brick stitch is you are anchoring your upcoming rows in those thread bridges, which is very hard to see when it's black thread with black beads. I'll show you again later when it's the white beads and the black thread. So I'm going to get rid of this little tail. In my other videos, I cut it and I burn it, or you just snip it. I recently got one of those little zappers. I'll tell you right now, it freaks me out because I'm so worried I'm going to fucking zap something else or burn myself. Yeah, see? Freak me out. We're going to do that. Okay. Nobody got hurt. Everybody's fine. So you are going to keep going up your rows, following your map. Each row, again, doesn't matter if you're increasing or decreasing, starts with 4 beads. Now, in order to have your piece sit nicely, all beads are just kind of slightly different in size. They do say like the most even, ours are the best, ours are the most consistent. Yeah, unless they're cylinder beads, they're not going to be the most consistent. There's always a little bit of difference, which is helpful, by the way. So the outer 2 beads, the first 2 beads you pick up, you want them to be just a slight bit thicker than the inner 2 beads because it helps your piece keep straight. If you're using cylinder beads, because you can use the same design, you can do it with cylinder beads, then obviously it's just the same size beads. So I've gone under my thread bridge. I'm tightening it. And you want this snug. So the whole way, every time we put beads down, we're wrapping it around our finger and giving it a really solid pull. I get messages all the time asking how to get like stiff tops on your fringe earrings. You control the tension. Super tight, please. So start each row with 4 beads, continue with 2 after that. We're going to the next thread bridge. Okay. We go under that thread bridge and back up through our beads. So again, give it a very good pull. My next couple beads. So follow along on your map. My map is showing me, well, I'm doing the black background with the white flower on it. So to each their own, everybody's going to have a little bit different one they're working on here. So again, you're pulling it super tight, but you're also in charge of the beads. So make sure if you need to adjust whether it's kind of skewing one way or the other. If mine was skewing this way, I would sandwich these between my finger and roll the other way. So I'm rolling the beads this way, pinching to kind of control that they're sitting upright and they're going the direction I want. And then I will give this a little snug tug again. So my next one, again, first 2 beads a little bit bigger than the next 2 beads. Not a huge deal if they're not, but it will help you keep your piece straight. So I went under my thread bridge, up through the second set of beads. Okay, pull tight. So when you're adding your beads, make sure you're following along on your pattern map as you go. If your beads are quite a different width, poke around within your beads, find the right one you want. Sometimes if I'm not sure how they'll sit, I'll do a little bit of that to see how they sit next to the other ones. Yep, they look great. So you can see the thread bridge there, my needle's under it. Okay, pull down, go back up through my beads. Okay, so that is how you do increasing. The main thing with increasing is that you are using that last thread bridge and the first thread bridge for 2 sets of 2 beads. Okay, so I just used that last thread bridge. I'm going to use the same thread bridge again. And going up through my beads. And again, You are in control of the beads. They are your beads, so you are in control. Nice and tight. So keeping, in order to get it nice and stiff, okay, you want to be in charge of this thread. You want to pull it nice and stiff and sandwich it between your fingers, okay? So you are going to keep going, starting with 4, adding 2 at a time until you get to your middle row, the widest row, okay? So I'm going to meet you here at this widest row for how we're going to turn around. If you have a kit or pattern, you will see step-by-step instructions on how to do this part. So instead of fast forwarding, because it's always quite a bit to fast forward and like me yatter over top of that, I'm just going to pause this so you pause it, and I'm going to meet you when it's the widest, okay? See you in a minute. Okay, as I'm adding the last 2 beads of this row, so this is how I do decreasing, okay? Last 2 beads in my row, I go under my thread bridge. Sometimes it's easier to just stick it in between the beads. Pull tight, put them in their place, and instead of going back up through those same 2 beads, I go through the 2 previous beads and go up. Okay, so I've done that, pulled it nice and tight. Now, to just have this kind of sit the way I would like it to sit, you don't need to do this. This is a me thing. I go under that thread bridge, and I'm just pulling it out towards the side of my piece. And now I add my first 4 beads. Sorry, I was just moving my map. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I have my 4 beads. I'm going under the second thread bridge. Okay. Letting them all settle. I'm going up through my second 2 beads, and I'm not pulling it crazy tight. I'm pulling it snug, and I'm kind of holding my piece still. Okay, I'm not a fan of having all the threads up the outside of my piece, which a lot of people do on the decreasing methods that they use. I don't like the look of that. I think it looks nicer for beaded pieces to just be about the beaded pieces. But sometimes people like to use the thread as like a design element. I've done that, but I don't do it on the outside of my woven pieces. So you're grabbing your next 2 beads, you're continuing along the row as normal, giving it lots of good tension as you go. There's really not a lot of difference between an increasing row and a decreasing row, other than how you're ending your row and beginning the next row. So I'm just going to show you another time, and then I'm going to meet you at the end of the piece on how we're going to finish that off, okay? Because you're going to do the same every row. You can re-watch this part over and over if you want, if needed, which if you're learning is a good thing. Just keep rewinding and watching because it'll be the same on each row. I have a tendency to like tangent talk on these like idle parts as I'm going along. I'm gonna try not to. Instead, I'm gonna sing the sentence to you. I probably should not be singing, but that is just fine for me and you. Well, I guess you're kind of like a captive audience, so you're welcome. Doo-doo-doo. Kind of eyeballing my beads to make sure I'm grabbing ones that aren't like drastically different in size, because I don't want to start creating a big hump in my work. If you create a big bump in your work, then just as you go into the next couple rows, either if you create a dip or a bump, then grab beads that help counteract that on that next row when you go over that section, right? Because we're talking like points of millimeters. These beads are like 2 millimeters. If you create a little bump, you're talking like a point of a millimeter can make a difference. Don't let that stress you out. Use that as an inspiration for the fact that you can, on the next row, counteract if you're getting a bit of a bump in a section or a bit of a dip. Or like if 2 beads are a little bit too short compared to the other ones, I promise you in a finished piece, you won't notice that. As long as the row is generally, the same. Okay, so these are our last 2 beads in this row. I'm going under my thread bridge to anchor my beads, always under the thread bridge to anchor the beads in a brick stitch. And then I'm going up through the previous 2 beads. Okay. Pulling it snug. Right? Nice and snug. Now I'm going under that thread bridge and pulling out towards the outside of my piece. Okay? I'm going to do that again just because I needed to kind of wiggle it in a little for something else. Okay, so out towards the edge of my piece. I need to move my map. Okay, I'm going to get my beads. Okay, so I'm going under my second one, up through this one. I'm not pulling crazy tight, just kind of giving it a little tug. I'm going to get my next set of beads, and then that's when I'm going to start this tight tension again. Okay. See, that's what I'm talking about. Those next 2 beads I did are just slightly shorter than the 2 before them. Don't freak out about that. That's totally fine. Just make sure the next ones you grab are more in line with the overall size. And again, we're talking millimeters, so it won't be a big deal. And keep going. Okay, so keep doing this. You're going to repeat those actions when you get to the end of the row and you're starting your next row. I'm going to meet you at the end right as we're about to do our last 4 beads, okay? So the row where it's 3 beads wide, you have 6 beads all together. I'm going to meet you there before we do our last little bunch of beads. Okay. I'm pausing this. This video is going to jump to that. Okay. I'm on the last little section. I've come up through my middle one. And now I'm going to add my last 4. So this is where we're going to weave around a little bit so that this last 4 doesn't kind of get a little squirrely with how they sit. So go under one of your thread bridges. You're going to go up through those beads. Then you're going to go down through these next ones, and I'm going to anchor down the side. So I'm now making sure my little beads have an anchor on the right and they have an anchor on the left, nice and tight. And then I'm just going to weave back a little bit through my piece to anchor this thread. And then we're going to be all done. So I'm going to go back on myself here so that it can pull against itself if it needs to. And I'm going back up through that same one I did. So don't worry too much about where you put your thread. I like to go back on itself a little bit there or weave around a little bit. Make sure it's nice and tight. I'm going to use that little thread zapper and not hurt myself. Right. Teet. All done. So that is how you do your diamond piece. Nice and stiff. Okay. And then when you need to, just a little bit of extra thread, that's it. And then when you're ready to put the top on, I don't have the right color top. This is not the one you want to put on there because I used the silver toned ear hook. So I've got my stainless steel ear hook. Twist, do not pull. And that is going to go like that. So now I'm done my diamond flower. So that's how you do your diamond. That's how I increase, decrease. I hope that was helpful. Bye.